and click on the remote school board meetings banner. We also provided public notice of the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing the meeting, including how to access the meeting using WebEx or via telephone. Instructions, again, have also been posted at sau53.org. We're also providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are any problems with access. If anybody has a problem accessing the meeting, please email Sandy Valine, that's S-Valine, S-V-A-L-I-N-E, at sau53.org. And finally, in the event the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done on a roll call vote. Also be aware that we're recording this meeting. We'll start by taking roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Anne.
Present and alone.
Thanks. Jean.
Present and alone.
April. Oh, I saw her, but I lost her. So we'll go to Amy.
Present and alone.
All right, and I'll keep an eye out. Dan, if you see April join and I don't see it, like, throw something at me. Oh, hold on. Okay, so she said she's trying to connect. She was having audio problems, so she's going to reboot and try again. So we'll give her a minute because we don't have minutes to discuss. So we're going to get right into public comment. I'd like her to be able to hear those if possible. So we will pause just for a couple of moments. I will say, if people have looked at the agenda, you'll see that there's very little on it tonight. We're focusing on the budget. We are a little bit behind. We usually would have had a little bit more in-depth discussion about the budget by this point, but obviously there's other pressing matters this year. So we're going to spend a good amount of time on that tonight. And I want to do that as much justice as I possibly can. So when we do start public comment, I'm going to actually write down the time and cut it off at the 15 minutes. So if you have something that you would like to contribute, make sure that your hand is raised. You can probably go ahead and do that now, so that you're in the queue for Dan when we kick it off. But I do want to keep that to 15 minutes tonight, or as close as possible. And there is another public comment section at the end of the evening. So if you have something that you can't get in the first one, hopefully you can get it in on the second one, and we'll make an effort, or at least can't guarantee anything, but to try to call on other people in the second one than we do in the first one. So give April just another minute or two.
She said she's going as fast as she can.
Okay.
Andy, are you present and alone?
Oh, thank you, Sandy. Yes, Andy, present and alone.
Hey, Andy, it's Amy. Sorry, I'm a little froggy today. I wonder if we can maybe just do agenda review, just to keep moving along.
Yeah, I think that's okay. Hopefully it'll only be another minute or two. So as far as agenda review, excuse me, I did want to add in Well, it's kind of part of the budget discussion. It's kind of not. I'm going to add it as 3E. I had a request to add a discussion of hourly employees and how they're impacted by going full remote. So we'll stick that onto 3E. And then, Patty, is there anything that you need to add to the agenda?
We do. We need to add a consent item and probably do it after non-public. And then we would need to add letter C to non-public.
And letter C is, I don't have that right in front of me. 1 second. Small letter C is matters which, if discussed in public, would likely affect adversely the reputation of any person other than a member of the board.
Yep. And then just for informational purposes, we do have reason to have a non-meeting at the end to discuss negotiations.
All right. Okay. I'm going to be kind of judicious about this tonight because, like I said, we do need to do quite a bit of budget work here. But is there anything else that any board members would like to see added? Actually, I see April. April, can you hear us? Are you present and alone?
I am present and alone. I apologize for the delay. I was having computer difficulties hearing. So thank you. A reboot resolved that issue. So thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Any other items for agenda review from anybody?
Andy, I do not. This is Ann. Thank you.
All right. We will jump back up to public comment then. I believe it's 3A. Sorry, I'm only working on one screen tonight, so I have to keep switching tabs. But 3A public comment. So it's 6:38. We'll call it 6:39 for rounding's sake. So Mr. Morse, if you've got some hands, you can go right ahead.
Yeah, Tim Girardi is first.
Go ahead, Tim.
Evening, everyone. So just a couple of points. Andy, you brought up impact hourly employees. That was a question that I had around this. If there would be furloughs or how things would be handled with certain, what I'll call non-essential employees during remote. I'm sure that we do have some classified based on students being not in the building at this point. So interested to hear how that's going to be handled. The other point that I have, I mentioned this before in other meetings, is with us being full remote now until the 15th, I would absolutely expect that there is a plan well before the 15th, probably over the next couple of weeks, to where we can hear the details of that on the next meeting, to give parents the choice to either be full remote or full in class. I know that we're remote for a variety of reasons, travel, family time, spike in cases, etc. There's a lot of reasons for that. At this point, I am just really indexed on working towards finally having a coherent plan where parents can choose the full remote option or in classroom option. I think full remote curriculum worked well. So for those that want to choose that option, I think we do have the capabilities there. We need to have the other side of the coin for this town and for our students, where parents think that they need to have students in the classroom in a safe way. I'd be welcome to debating any type of a plan that may be put forward. But I think it's time where come the 15th, we get serious about having both options. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Sandra had her hand up. I don't know if that was Sandy Boleen or not.
Thank you.
All right.
Mark Dumont just put his hand up.
Go ahead, Mark.
Hi, I'm Mark Dumont, Donna Drive. I want to thank the SAU for advertising for the substitute teachers on the Pembroke Academy sign. So it's good to see that. But other than that, I want to know what else we are doing to get ready to open the school back up in 7 weeks, and preparing to, whether the school board wants to do it or not. We should definitely be making a plan. So I would definitely like to see the conversation start tonight. And I want to second what Tim had said. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark.
Rachel Hamilton is next.
Go ahead, Rachel.
Hi, I have two things this evening. An email was sent to families today stating that we would need to complete the daily screening for our students. We understand a screening if students are coming into the building for services or playing sports, coming into contact with staff members. It is also feasible in our minds to request parents notify the school if their student tests positive. However, we are requesting that elementary age students' families whose students are not on campus at any time not be required to fill out the daily convenient MD screening for the month of December. The value of completing the screening beginning January 4th is understandable, as it would provide the number of students in quarantine leading up to the return to school on January 18th. Our second request this evening is to receive communication regarding the plan for what model will be implemented in January. As parents of a kindergarten student, we are very concerned about the social and emotional development of our children, and we hope that the Hill School Administration and SAU office, in conjunction with the board, are planning ahead to help these young children get back in school in at least a hybrid model. If staffing is a main hurdle, we really hope that the district will be creative. If triage of schools is needed, though not ideal, middle and high school students are of the age and maturity that could handle a remote option in order to pool resources, or perhaps extra staff needed to keep Hill School open. Please know that we are both public school educators, one in the elementary and the middle school levels, my husband and I, whose schools are remaining open in the hybrid model right now, though cases in our districts are ongoing each day. So we're in the trenches right along with everyone, and we don't make this request lightly, but we just ask for creativity. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Any others?
That looks like it's it for hands.
Okay, looks like we have just a couple of phones, so you can go ahead and open those up. If you haven't done this before, oh, I forgot, you can't open those up anymore, right? So if you're on the phone right now, if you want to hit *6, it should unmute you. And if I see the little mute symbol go away, I'll call on you. Well, otherwise, just unmute yourself and state your name. And if you've got something to contribute, I will give you the floor. Okay. Seeing none, then we will move on to agenda item 3C, since we've already done agenda review. So agenda item 3C is the current year budget update from Ms. Wheeler. Amber, are you ready? Is this thing on?
Did you ask me a question?
Yeah, sorry. We're on to 3C, which is the current year update.
Sorry, the sound went out for a little bit, so I didn't hear anybody. So I thought it was paused because somebody was talking, or you
No
were waiting
problem.
for someone to come on. So you need C. So update. So the Fund 1 budget right now is bottom line. Obviously, it's still early, as we're just beginning of December, but it's at $798,313.
Okay. Are there questions from the board around the current year budget?
Thanks, Andy. This is Amy. Just to confirm, that's a projected surplus, right?
That's at this time. Yeah, that's where we're at.
Okay. And then, like, if you know, something really important to you depended on it, and we put you on the spot and said, you know, how do you think the year's going to end? I know you said it's early. Like,
It's
I mean,
way too early. Yeah,
that was by hundreds of thousands at this point.
I mean, at this point, I would not feel comfortable saying that this is where we're going to end. We're still getting in invoices for special ed services and things like that. We still have situations with transportation that may do, may work things out, all depending on what's decided with hourly employees. I mean, there's a bunch that goes into this. It's much too early. I would say typically around, the end of January, beginning of February, I would feel a little more comfortable saying where I think we're going to be. There's too many variables right now.
That's super helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Andy, this is Ann.
Go ahead.
I've got a question on how much of that surplus is going to be deposited into the capital reserves that we voted in March of 2020.
Oh man, I was just looking at those warrant articles today, and I don't have them open anymore. Amber, do you know that off the top of your head?
For the warrant articles that were being presented,
No, that voted on.
No, for last year. Like, what will have to go this June? From whatever surplus there might be, what's scheduled to be put into reserves? Uh-oh.
we have to vote on that. I mean,
No, that's Ann's asking what the dollar amount of the warrant articles that we voted on last March was.
well,
Because that would come out of the current year surplus, right?
Yes. I don't have that off the top of my head. I didn't bring that with me tonight.
Okay. I might be able to find it while we're discussing other things.
82,000, maybe. Actually, one
Let's
second.
see, Amber, yeah, you're right. I'm trying to find it right
82,
now.
I think. $82,500
Thank you.
from surplus to the trust. You're welcome. Sorry, my brain got a little frazzled there for a second.
The second question I have, Andy, is how much are we saving on transportation compared to last year? Because I know we did have, issues that we weren't able to have all of our buses run.
Well, that will change from month to month depending on what services they're providing and what they're not. And we've received some credits at this point. One, obviously, while we're in hybrid and while we're remote, they will be crediting us back those days.
Okay, so we won't be paying our bus contract while we're out for the next 7 weeks.
I think that's for the board to decide, but I know that when we are utilizing buses, if we have 8 buses and we're only utilizing 5 buses, they're only charging us for 5 buses.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Andy, this is April. I have a question about the buses.
Oh, hold on. April, can you mute your? Are you muted? So I've got. Okay. Whew. I don't know what happened. Did everybody else hear that?
Yes.
I just had like terrible feedback from somewhere. So
Andy,
let's try to.
If some people have multiple devices going, that's what happens.
Okay. So if that's the case, let's try to avoid that. That was scary. April, I'm sorry, I couldn't understand anything you said. Go ahead and give it another try.
No problem. I couldn't even hear myself, so I understand. So I have a question. The bus contract, when we have talked to them in past meetings, it sounds like we're only being billed for the buses that we're using. So I'm a little confused about why we would be getting a credit when we've been told we're only being billed for the buses that are being used. So I'd like to know more information about that.
You're still muted, Amber.
And I was muted. When I say credit on their invoices, it shows up as a credit because what they do is they outline what the contract should have been, and then they apply any credits for those particular buses that didn't run. So each month, as we get invoiced, your amount that Pembroke's paying out would be less than anticipated.
Thank you. So it sounds like we are indeed being billed only for the services that our students are receiving.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Great. That sounds good at the moment. I know it's really early. Amber, is there anything, this is kind of a silly question, I guess. Is there anything big that you know of on the horizon that might be coming down the pipe? Not necessarily COVID related, but anything that you could see, equipment purchases or anything like that you could see in the near term putting a big hurt on this, or in the other direction, a revenue increase, anything that we should be aware of at this point?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right. Then we can move on to the 21-22 budget. I believe that's next.
Andy, before we do that, I'd like to make a motion that the Pembroke School Board reimburse the transportation companies for actual services received. The reason I make that motion is because last year, I don't recall the board approving that we continue to pay the bus companies when we were in a remote model. And I feel like I just want to send the clear message of, if this is what the board decides, that it's a board decision. Thank you.
Okay.
This is Ann. I'll second.
Okay. Is there discussion?
I'm not clear on the motion. This is Amy. Can you explain the motion, please, April?
Sure. The motion is that the Pembroke School District reimburse the bus company for services provided. That's what's stipulated in the contract. What happened last spring is while buses were not running, there were payments made to the bus company. And that's my concern. I just want to make sure that we're paying them per the contract.
So I guess my point of confusion is the wording centering around reimburse. So the way that it's worded, it makes me feel like it's setting up a premise where the bus company is paying us money and then we are paying them back to reimburse them, which I don't understand is the case.
Okay, then I would like to change my motion if someone would care to approve my amended motion that the Pembroke School District pay only for the actual cost of transporting students as stipulated in the contract.
Okay.
Thank you, Amy.
Sense to me. So like if 0 buses are running, we're paying $0. As Amber said earlier, we're contracted for 8 buses, but 5 buses are running, we're paying for 5 buses. Is that what you're getting at?
Exactly.
Okay.
Other discussion?
This is Ann. I still second the amended motion.
Okay.
I have other discussion. Can I please ask Amber or Patty if they or anyone feels confident that the contract, like this wouldn't put us in violation of the contract?
I was going to ask the same thing. Patty or Amber, whoever feels more comfortable. Don't talk over each other.
Go ahead, Amber.
I'm not confident that it's in violation of the contract. I am concerned that we could lose our drivers to another district, quite honestly. We have a lot of districts that, even within our own SAU, that are short bus drivers. And if we are not paying Dale, I know they had said in the spring that if we do not pay, then they were going to not be able to pay their drivers. And if they're unable to pay their drivers, they're going to lose them. There's already a huge shortage in bus drivers. Most districts do not have enough bus drivers as it is. So I could see those bus drivers going to a different district so that they can remain being paid. So that would probably be my biggest concern at this point.
So what in a fully remote model for what does it end up being, 5-ish actual school weeks. What would we be paying them? I'm sure there's still some special ed transportation and things like that. But would we currently, without in absence of this motion, would we still be paying for those 5 buses?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
For whatever buses that are typically running as of last week. You know what I mean?
Right. Yep.
If you
Yep.
were
The 4
only
buses.
running
Right.
5 of your 8 buses, they're not going to charge you for 8 of your 5. You know what I mean? They would
Right.
continue to charge exactly what the buses that had been running should you still be in school.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So Andy, this is Ann. How much is that amount, Amber?
I don't have that off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
And just to add to that, like Amber said, we will be running some buses because we are offering special ed services. So we are still working on how many students need transportation. So we don't have that number yet. And we're also trying to work on making sure if parents can't pick up meals, we have the means to get the meals delivered. So I think there's a little bit still up in the air.
Can someone please inform me about the extent to which athletics would also use the buses?
No, that's separately. Those are fees incurred separately comparative to the actual transportation of students to and from school. So that's additional.
Got it.
But I think it's like, I don't have it off the top of my head, but it's like $300 and something a day per bus, if that helps.
Amy, the games aren't starting until mid-January anyway. Practices can start December 14th, no games. So there won't be any buses.
Thank you.
Aside from, this is Gene, aside from possibly, which Amber seems to think would be an issue, putting us in breach of the contract, my biggest concern was actually losing the drivers. Where we were at the beginning of the year, we don't want to be there again on January 18th when they go back, or 19th, whatever it might be, if they go back. I think we should all take that under advisement to make sure that we have the personnel in place to move the students when we have to.
Yeah, I would agree, Gene. I think that, even taking it a step further, we're certainly hearing from members of the community that there's an appetite to start making a movement towards getting kids fully back in the building. I don't think it's any secret that I'm not really there yet, but if we take the risk of losing a couple more drivers, to me, that pushes any possible action on that out even further if we can't transport kids. I think this is sadly just another kind of risk assessment, right? And I think we've been through a lot of these with COVID. It's what's your risk tolerance? And I think if it were just, we pay them or we don't pay them and they're not going to be doing anything, I might feel differently. But I think at this point, I would not support this motion with the additional information that we're still going to be delivering meals and providing some special ed transportation services. So it sounds like it's not going to be completely unused. And I guess, I'm not okay risking losing more drivers since we're already kind of on the edge in that capacity.
Andy, this is Ann.
Yep.
Can I move to table the motion until our next meeting so we know the cost of what we could potentially be savings? Because right now we have no idea.
Sure. And I would second that. So discussion around tabling this motion until next meeting, and we'll ask Patty or Amber to give us at least a rough idea of, new information between now and then, and what kind of that dollar amount breaks down to if we chose not to pay for those 4.5, 5.5 weeks, whatever it is. What's the actual, a rough idea of what the dollar amount is that we're actually saving, because that's important for the decision as well.
Andy, this is April. I think it's very important that we remember that we are stewards of the public funds and we have people who work hard. This is not free money. So I don't mind tabling this motion, but I think it would be worthwhile to also have the information of how much we paid the transportation companies for services that were not rendered in the spring so that we can take that into consideration as well. So that's information I would like to have as part of the consideration next time we take this up. Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion on tabling? All right, then I'll call the question on a roll call vote to table the motion regarding bus payment until our next meeting, which I don't have in front of me. I believe it's 15th, December 14th. On a roll call vote, Ann.
Yes.
Amy.
Yes.
Jean.
Yes.
April.
Yes.
And I'm a yes too. So we'll bring that up next time. I've got a note to make sure that it gets on the agenda.
Andy, I'd like to make a motion related to the busing. My motion is to authorize the superintendent either directly or by delegating to other staff to negotiate with the bus company a discount which would allow us to not lose drivers.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay. Patty, do you have input on that?
I was actually thinking about that as you were speaking, because I think there's an opportunity, because like Amber mentioned, we are short drivers in other districts. So maybe if we can negotiate that if some of those drivers go to a different district to help out during this remote period, then we could negotiate the discount on the contract. And then I think in a couple of weeks, we'll have a better understanding too of how many students need to be transported to school for their services, as well as whether we need to deliver meals using our buses. So I think we'll have more information in 2 weeks.
Okay. Any other discussion around the motion to allow Patty to negotiate with the bus company? April, go ahead.
This is April. So I just want some clarity on that. I'm okay with authorizing the superintendent or superintendent staff to do the negotiation. I just want to, as a point of clarity, make sure that whatever negotiations are made, it's really up to the school board on whether we accept what's been negotiated. Is that the intent?
That was not my intent.
Thank you for that clarification.
Ann, did you have something?
Yeah, that's it's just what I was going to ask. So if we're making the motion to have the superintendent negotiate with them, how do we know that amount? We're just giving the authorization to negotiate and not have understanding the dollar value that goes with that?
Yes, my intent is that we would not know the dollar value that goes with that, because the expectation of the wording is that they would go as low as they can possibly go without losing drivers.
Andy, this is April. I can't support that simply based on conversations when we have had Dell Transportation, when it has been acknowledged that our contract does stipulate that we're only responsible to pay for the buses that we've used. So I don't support paying more than what our contract stipulates. Thank you.
Others? I'd like to move this along if possible so we can get back to the budget conversation. Amy, could you restate the motion for me?
Sure, I can try. To authorize the superintendent to directly or to delegate to other staff to negotiate with the bus company a discount that would prevent the loss of drivers.
And Jean seconded, correct? Okay, so on a roll call vote, April?
No.
Ann?
No.
Jean? Sorry, Jean, I didn't hear you.
Yes.
Sorry, Amy, go ahead.
Yes.
And I'm a no for now. So that motion fails. Okay, so if we're done with bus conversation, we can turn it back over to Amber for the 2020, this is hard to say, 2021-2022 budget discussion.
All right, thank you. All right, so first I would like to go over the changes that I've made since the last time we've been in there. So if I could run through that, and then some new items that I've added to your package. And then we could have further discussion after that. Does that work?
Excellent.
Okay. So on page 3 of the packet, on line 14, you'll notice any changes that I've made are in yellow throughout this budget. So on page 3, line 14, which is teacher salaries, there's a change in that line, and that's due to a roster change that went down, not up. Page 3, the same page on line 37, which is ELL services, we've added in some dollars for translation services.
Amber, can I just stop you really quickly?
Yep.
I'm sorry. I forgot to mention, we posted the budget on the Pembroke School Board webpage so that anyone listening to the meeting can log in and go to the webpage and open up the budget and follow along with us. And I forgot to mention that. Thank you.
This is April. I just want to say thank you for doing that ahead of the meeting so people can follow along.
On page 7, on line 409, which is teacher salaries for special ed, that also was a roster change. On page 7, did I write that down? Actually, page 8, on line 424, that is aide salaries, and that also was a roster change. On page 13, line 896, that also was a roster change. On page 15, on line 1060, I just took the cents out of there. It said $6.50. I took that out. On line 1073, which is moderator, I did the same thing. I just took the cents out. On page 17, line 1209, that change is due to an upgrade in internet services. Page 21, line 1545, which is health insurance. That line changed in reflection of the roster changes. Line 1561 on page 21, again for the dental line, the change in that line was also due to roster change. On page 22, and I forgot to put them in yellow, but fringe benefits for the Hill School, so any line with 104, those would have been affected as well because there was roster. I just forgot yellow. I apologize for that.
Excuse me, Amber. What were the line numbers?
Well, there's a bunch of them. So it would start on line 1568. It would be 1572, 1576, 1580, 1588, 1600, and 1604.
Thank you very much, Amber.
You're welcome. And then the other change would have on page 22, line 1639. I updated the bond payments as when I put in the first one, when you see the bond schedules, if you haven't already, I put them in the drive. It's very easy to go down on the wrong year and I was up a year. So I put in the correct year there. So those have been updated. And only changes I had for the Fund 1 budget. I did also add in the budget rosters again for you because there were roster changes, so you have that in your packet. Those are on pages 24 through 39. The other items that are in your packet that were not in there before, the high school tuition and enrollment. So I worked through the estimation of where I think we're potentially going to be next year, which helps drive where the estimated revenue is going to be. That can be found on pages 40 to 42. The tuition rate that was estimated for next year is $13,984. I base it on a 3-year average and into consideration the freezes we've had over the last couple of years, as well as COVID-19. The enrollment estimation was based off of 91%. This year, because things have just been, I wouldn't call it delayed, but just a little off track, it did give me some time to look at the numbers when the district budgeted, as well as when we did the tax rate impact. Where we were at with enrollment there. So I had 3 periods or 2 periods of time to look at before I made my estimation. So I did take that into consideration as well. I'm estimating 16 students for out of school district that are out of non-area schools, I mean. So we have got a student from Deerfield, a student from Loudon. We have 12 students I'm predicting from Hooksett and 2 students from Pittsfield. On pages 43 and 44, that's your estimated revenue. The big changes you're going to see on here are really is the adequacy aid. We've been talking about the last couple years, and there was in the last biennium budget or the current biennium budget, there was some extra dollars that were allotted to school funding. We will lose that next year. And so what I did on the revenue sheet is I broke out those specific items so that you could see what those dollars particularly were. So if you were to turn to page 44, up at the top, it says Adequacy Aid Education Grant. Underneath it, I broke out the free and reduced additional aid and the fiscal capacity disparity aid, and how much was allotted to those 2 areas. And those are the 2 areas that won't be moving forward. The other change is that we need to take into consideration is that the middle column, which is the tax rate set, that column takes in the surplus that we had for the end of the last fiscal year, as well as any warrant articles. So it looks like there's a difference of $1.1 million, but there really isn't. The difference between the tax rate setting and where we're estimating to be next year is a decrease of $342,690. I did put a little blurb at the bottom of that worksheet, and I put it in gray so that it stood out, that explained what I just stated in regards to the surplus and the trust also playing a role in that. The other piece that's in your packet is the estimated tax impact, and that's on page 45 and 46. This doesn't include any warrant articles yet. Because there hasn't been any discussion, that you haven't even seen them yet, I thought at this point it was a little too early to do that. But certainly after discussion this evening, I can have that for you next time. The increase in the tax rate, we have to remember the big piece that plays a role is the amount that was returned back to offset taxes. That obviously reduces the tax rate, so it makes it look like this upcoming year is an increase of a substantial amount, but it's really not. It's because of the surplus that went back. All that's in the packet, I shouldn't say that's all, that's a lot, but that is what's in the packet that you have before you this evening. And so we can move forward with whatever you'd like to discuss.
All right, questions from the board?
Andy, this is Ann.
Go ahead.
So on page 3, line 45, we are removing 11,999. And what is that due to?
That summer program,
Mm-hmm.
and Karen might a little better than I could.
That's a regular ed program, Amber. That's not a special ed program.
I'm not quite sure what summer program is.
Yeah, so Dan and I actually talked about that today. So our summer program is the remediation that is provided at Pembroke Academy for students that need it during the summer. And we've gone back and forth over the years. If you track back, you see that it's up and it's down and it's up and it's down. And that's because we've covered it with grant funds whenever we're able to. So if we feel like we have enough grant funds to put in for our summer program, or we were able to add funds in, then it gets lowered each year. So it's been up and down, but it's because of grant funding.
Thank you, Patty. And I was also looking at the next line for consultant, line 46, billing from the SAU for tutors and teachers. Do we have any idea how many students that impacts?
That's the English with second language. It depends on how many students there are. Can we give that information, Karen?
Karen, you're muted.
It's a small number, so we really can't, and it fluctuates. Currently, in Pembroke, it represents a small number of students. I'm not comfortable releasing that number because it's a number less than 10. But usually we have students coming and going, so it's a very static number. So we could start the school year with a low number of students and then have students, move into the district or move out. So that does fluctuate. That's based on the students that we have right now and the services that they are projected to receive next year based on their capacity for the English language and their ability to apply it in school.
Thank you very much. So I guess I'm sorry, Andy, but my next question is, so what the line 53 is the the consulting services. So that's gone down by 20,000. So is that probably because they've moved into the next, up to line 46? Because the consultant, we have minuses on line 55 and also 58. So is that just because the students moving around?
Well, we only charge for services that are provided. So as Karen just mentioned, students come and go. They may need services one year, they may not need them the next. They could also move from one school to the other. So really, it does fluctuate a bit depending on the services that are needed.
It also depends on what services they're getting. There's certified and non-certified staff providing those services. And so it depends on the bulk of the instruction plus having the consultant services to do the planning and all those kinds of things too.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
If I could jump in just for a second, Amber, this is actually a question that was asked at the Municipal Budget Committee, but probably good to have a discussion. Well, just have you tell us here so the public can hear also. The red lines in the budget are for things that are considered fixed costs. And I think I have a fairly decent understanding of what you mean by that, but if you could tell everybody what you classify as fixed costs for the purposes of this document, that would be awesome.
Sure. So the items that are in red that are considered fixed costs are those that are services we have to provide per law or contractual services that we have that we are unable to change because we're already part of a contract.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ann, did you have further questions? Or Let me move on to somebody else.
Yeah, I have.
Oh, you got muted, Dan. I don't know if you're still talking or not.
Thank you, Andy. No, I have quite a few questions, but maybe others have the same questions. So if you want to just move on to them.
Okay, I'll circle back.
Thank you.
April, do you have budget questions?
Not at this time.
Okay. Amy?
Sorry, hard time getting that mute button. Also not at this time, thank you. I do want to thank Amber though. I remember when I was first involved in reading the documents that you prepare for this process, and I continue to be impressed. Thank you.
Jean?
Nope, don't have any questions at this point in time. Just like to state that I'd like this budget moving forward to reflect the uncertainty that may be experienced with revenue going next year. Amber does a great job of projecting out, but I'm concerned, whether it be from the state or the sending, schools, that I'd like to see this budget maybe trimmed down a little bit more. We've got the surplus that's going back. We've got a surplus running right now. But looking forward to the uncertainty, there's any, when the staff gets together, when the administrators get together and they're talking about their needs for next year, I'd like everyone to consider that it may be a hardship year next year, and we may not get what we need moving forward as far as revenue goes. So that's pretty much it.
Okay. I'll jump in. I've got a handful here. So I guess, Amber, I don't know if this is something that you can sum up or not. I'm wondering how, I know the CARES Act money is in the current year budget. How does that, is there a rollover effect to next year? Are there things that it paid for that are going to save us money because we don't have to buy them next year? I think we spent some of that money on Chromebooks, and we have a regular Chromebook replacement cycle. So, is some of next year covered? Just what can you tell me about the CARES money and how that might affect next year's budget, if at all?
Sure. So the CARES funding actually goes through next September. But with that said, CARES funding cannot fund anything that is typically part of your operating budget. So something that you would automatically normally budget within your operating budget cannot be covered by CARES funding. It has to be specifically COVID related.
Okay.
With that said, we've had to purchase Chromebooks and things like that. Could that help us out next year? Potentially. I would have to have further discussion with administration on that to see where they're at with that, whether what they've purchased has helped with that, or whether these were over and beyond what's needed. I'm not sure to be honest. I would need to have conversations with them. There will be revenue coming in this year as well as next year. But in discussions with the Department of Revenue, she has stated that I should not put that down as anticipated, but leave them as unanticipated.
Okay, great.
The revenue sheet, you're not going to see CARES Act funding on there. I originally had it on there for the estimated revenue that I gave for TAC in October, and she actually told me to take it off. So she said to leave it as unanticipated at this point.
Okay.
With that said, I know you made a comment in regards to revenue. At this point, I'm not aware of any revenue shortfalls other than the adequacy aid. That's the big change. Other than that, I'm not aware of any state funding issues at this time.
Okay. Thank you. I had a note here, but it was from the last version, so I'm just trying to make sure I get the line numbers right. I think now it is 452 and 454. There are some fairly significant increases in contracted services, and I'm just wondering. So 454 in particular is almost 100% of the cost. Is that because last year that was paid out of a trust or some other mechanism, or is that kind of a new cost? That's a kind of a big ticket item. So I'm just wondering what that is.
Those contracted services are special ed. And so those particular are based off of the students that we currently have on the roster and students we believe will be attending Pembroke Academy next year. So it's dependent on the services that are needed to be provided. So each year that will change. Some years it'll be more, some it'll be less. It could fluctuate throughout the year.
And sometimes it's going to change from the 105 to the 205 as kids get older and move between schools.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep.
That makes sense.
As well as students may have needed services one year, they may need less the next, or they may need more. So those types also change. So there are some variables in that as well.
Okay.
Andy, this is April. I just want to follow up on that, if I may.
Sure.
It does state that it's for CPI training. If there's an increase in cost for CPI training, does that mean that the district intends to restrain and seclude children at a greater rate?
That's a different line. That's a different line that you're talking about.
That's not the 1200 line?
No, it is. I think it was contracted services. April's talking about training, which is the line above.
Yep. Just so I'll answer that, April. The CPI training is a preventative training. It's de-escalation. So it's not the intention that students ever would be restrained. It's always the first line is to work towards de-escalation and common language and all those pieces first. I think that we have very good data, and I keep that data so that I do know if students are being restrained, and I could say the data looks really good at this point, and I think it's because everyone is trained, and we do have to do the training as a refresher every year. There's the 2 trainers that we have in district, and they have to get through everybody as a refresher every year, just so to make sure that that people are up to speed. So that's why that training line it's in that training line. But the intention is never to restrain students.
Thank you, Ms. Georgia. I may have misread that line. So the notes that are in there, that's for the item immediately above the line item. Is that correct, Amber?
Yes, that's correct. So Andy was referring to line 452. And then there's a note on 451. That note goes to the line above with 450. So anytime there's a note, it will be below the line it's referencing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. I had one other, let me scroll down. It was a food service question. Let me just make sure it hasn't changed since last time I looked. I know that the food service budget is sort of separate and its own kind of animal. The budgeted number is higher for next year. Is it reasonable to expect some rollover for this year? I know they can actually keep their surplus, unlike the rest of us. But with hybrid and remote, and obviously they're still working and providing meals and stuff. But I'm assuming it's at somewhat lesser capacity. Do you think, is it reasonable to expect that some of this year's budget might roll over into next year's budget to help that number some?
Yes, we had heard from Donna, and I think there will be the potential surplus in her budget this year. But the reason why you're seeing it, probably this is the largest it's ever been since I've been here anyway. And the reason being is exactly what you're talking about, is the food services is allowed to have a surplus. And Donna's done a great job with that. Due to specifically last year, in the year before, there was some deficit for food service, but last year there was too, and it ate away at pretty much all of the surplus that was there. So only the remaining surplus that was available, and I don't have it in this budget, that was like 54,000 or something. which isn't much comparative to what that budget is. So they were able to offset it a little bit, but the majority of whatever the shortfall is, Pembroke has to pick up, and that's part of state law. It was actually, we were only able to cover, maybe there's a little more, 130. I'll have to go back and look. But there was some they were able to offset, but it will deplete the entire surplus with this 21-22 budget unless she has a huge surplus this year. I know she mentioned, I think I read something in regards to she thinks she might have about 48,000 at this point, but it is still very early. And it will depend on the exact funding we get back from the state. They are stating that they will refund us for the meals that we are serving. But I'd like to see the dollars before I say I'm comfortable with that.
I'm right there with you. The last one that I had on my list, I think has been changed since the last draft. I had that there was, at the Hill School, we had 1.6 librarians. We had a split position that was 0.6 someplace and 0.4 somewhere. And one of the 0.6 was library teacher. And then there was another FTE that was library teacher. But I think some of that affects some of the budget changes that you mentioned in yellow. And I think that those numbers both say 1 in the FTEs for those positions now.
That's correct. That was part of the roster change.
Okay. And then I guess just a quick note for the people listening, just because I really dove into this last year, I want everybody to kind of understand something on the revenue side, and part of why this is not an exact science, I guess. If you understand where we're at right now, it's December of 2020, and what Amber has given us tonight is a very early projection of how many students from all of our sending districts will arrive on our doorstep at the last week of August of 2021. So we're Amber's projecting out 9 months here, which is no easy feat. And so if there's a revenue change in either direction, either we end up with more kids and more money, or less kids and less money. These numbers are still changing, and these aren't going to be the final numbers, but the final numbers that we vote on in March, that's still what, 5 months, 4 months, 6 months, 6 months early from when those kids actually show up. So just something to point out that the budget stuff is, I think Amber does a great job at spelling out all these different lines, and the board does their best to understand them all. But there is some level of movement in here that can't be predicted or controlled. And we have had conversations in the past about the confidence level of the numbers and what percentage, if Allenstown says there's going to be 56 kids coming, Amber doesn't budget that there's going to be 56 kids coming, because that's just not realistic. So anyway, just a note on kind of how this stuff works and where some of the mystery is involved, I guess. Go ahead, Amber.
I also want to say is I do look at the point of time of happening now and up to September, but I also take into consideration the entire next year. So I'm not looking at only the kids that are going to show up in September. I'm looking at who's going to be there that June. So June of 2021. So that's a large span of time, and obviously a lot can happen between now and then, which is why I try to look at a variety. I created those documents that gave me some data points. So I really take a look at that and do some analytical work on top of reviewing where the current roster is, where we think the current roster is going to be next year. So there is a lot of thought and many, many hours and many days that go into this. And I wish I had a crystal ball because that would solve a lot of the problems. But like you said, it can fluctuate, and we do the best we can do with what the information we have and what we can anticipate.
Yep. And thank you for all your work on it. If I could do one more, I apologize for so many. And Anna, we'll get back to you too. I would like to hear, if it's okay, from our principals on how they're feeling about the budget. I know you all have a hand in your building budgets, and I'm wondering if you're feeling restricted with this budget, or if you're comfortable with it, or If there's, if you still think there might be some wiggle room, I just kind of a general feeling of your buildings would be great.
Andy, do you mind if I start?
No, absolutely not.
I just want to, before the principals get into their particular budgets, I just wanted to let the board know that we did have a meeting this morning as promised. There's a document in your drive. So the principals will give you the specifics, but given the frozen budget, there are some things that were put in this year that, assuming they can't get them because the budget's frozen, they put in for them next year. So if you look at that document, I think we've come up with like $100 and something thousand that if you say, okay, we're $700 and something thousand in surplus, so go ahead and get that stuff, even though the budget's frozen. And then next year, we're going to cut that $118,000 out of the budget. Obviously, this does mean that they did a really good job keeping things lean because, you're looking at a 2-year span and they're only putting in for things once. Some of their replacement cycles are still there just to keep up with everything, but they definitely had a really great approach and tried to cut back as much as possible. And I just wanted to point that document out so that we could have that conversation and then let them get into their specifics. So thank you.
Sure thing. I haven't dove into that document yet, but I guess it's not very long.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
So Patty, when, is it your recommendation that the board vote to unfreeze this amount of expenditure for this current academic year? And if it is your recommendation for the board to do that, at what time do you think we should do that? Is this like a now thing, or is this like a, in 3 months when we have a little bit more certainty thing?
So the board didn't vote to freeze the budget. I froze the budget right at the beginning of the year, and we've been doing this kind of collaboratively. I've been updating you on where we're at, and I've been telling you the budget's frozen and that, all the purchases are going through me. So, this is a pretty big chunk, which is why I wanted to bring it to your attention, because I would like to get a sense from the board. And I would suggest waiting in, maybe another month until Amber can feel more confident about this. And at that time, we're still going to be working on your budget. And we might say, well, we're more comfortable if you use half of it this year and then leave half of it in there for next year. So even when the budget goes to the NBC, we can still make changes if you're not prepared before it goes on December 17th. So not necessarily advocating for any decisions tonight, just wanted you to understand the process that we've been using.
Thank you.
Thanks. I guess if Mr. Marston is with us, if you wouldn't mind giving us your thoughts.
I'm with you. How is everybody?
Good to see you, John. Yeah,
nice seeing you. I'm not quite sure what you're looking for, Andy, but I can tell you that one of the hard parts that I feel like I deal with is to no one's fault. But having a frozen budget for this year and last year, I could give you an example of replacement furniture. I haven't replaced furniture for a while, and with the amount of kids in the building and staff, you have to do that on a regular basis. So those things we have not spent for maybe 2 years now, I think, Patty. So those things begin to accumulate. So it's like eventually you don't have we don't have anything left that without replacing things. So that's one of the frustrations. Having said that, I think the budget as presented is certainly doable and strong. Something that I would consider we can operate and function very well under. There's always room for negotiation, I guess I could say. The one area that we still are wrestling with is technology area. There's been a lot of movement with technology recently, and we're actually still waiting to receive products. So once we get a better handle on that, we'll know how that could impact next year. We still need to do a replacement. Most everything that I have in my budget we're not adding, we're replacing. There's very few things that we have that are like new stuff. I mean, I don't think there's anything. Everything is all replacement to maintain our current status in our current supplies and technology, uniforms, all those type of things. So there's really nothing new. It's all replacement. But I feel very confident with the presented budget that we're in good shape.
Great. You said you weren't sure what I wanted, but that was exactly what I wanted to hear. Let's see. Is Miss Gary with us?
I'm here. So this is my first one here at Hill School, but I think I echo a lot of what John's saying. The conversation we had, we really started looking through everything, and it's really about replacement right now. I know we've ordered a lot of technology, but I think we also have to keep in mind, especially for Hill School, that the CARES allowed us to get to a point where we're one-to-one, which our budget might not have allowed us to for several years. But now it's the responsibility definitely of maintaining that and the replacement cycle. There's more now that we have to replace over the course of the year. So really keeping up with that replacement cycle to make sure that we don't kind of let it go by the wayside. But other than that, it's pretty much the same thing. I feel, we kind of went through and really looked at our needs to make sure that we would have the supplies that we needed, and just working through that replacement cycle. I do feel pretty good about the budget. I think there's a couple things also that if we do look at the CARES, once we get some things that are in, we still have the possibility of maybe cutting a few of those things under that new item category. But other than that, I think we're in a pretty good shape with it.
Great, thank you. Mr. Morris?
There. At the risk of being boring, I'll just echo what everyone else has said. I mean, it's really about replacement. I would say that there are some items that people put in for that did not make it into this budget that was presented to you even initially. And I think part of that was to take into consideration how unpredictable this school year has been, and that we don't really know when it's going to end. The unpredictability, not the school year. And so just trying to, keep that in consideration. And also just the fact that, it's tough out there. And so, trying to be cognizant of what people in town are dealing with, and trying to, be as responsible in terms of our what we're asking for as possible.
Thanks. And as the guy that has to stand up and present this to the town, I appreciate that too. Can I ask Mr. Coughlin? You've got some items on this, possible budget freeze release type of thing here. If I could get your opinion on the budget and how you're feeling about things, that would be great.
Yeah, so to talk about items that are in next year's budget that are in the frozen budget this year, at the Hill School, I have some money in for some portable walls. The Hill School is a fluid document, for lack of better words, and what they do in one room one year isn't what they do in the room next year. And to help attain what they need to do, we've put in the budget for them to get some portable walls to be able to move them around as they see fit, year to year, room to room. Also, at the Three Rivers School, we had some athletic fencing that we put on hold this year. So part of that was to do one of the athletic fields backstops this year and one of the athletic fields next year. We currently are on hold with the project for this year, so we've put both in for next year. So there is some movement there. And at the Pembroke Academy, we have some LED upgrades and some fencing as well that are on hold this year that we have pushed off to next year. With that being said, those items could go this year, they could go next year. I always say, what's another year? At some point, what's another year gets us into a situation like the village, and that's what we try and prevent. So our job is to identify these, put them in there, talk about them, and hopefully go through with maintaining our facilities. So also with that, we try and do a bunch and as much as we can through some of our warrant articles, which you guys are talking about kind of as is with the surplus. And I'm sure you'll talk about them further along in the meeting. So we try and do as much with that, with specifically labeled capital improvement projects. So those are our big dollar items that we try and forecast out as far as we can. And at this point in time, we have a lot on that list that we're forecasting, whether it's for this year, next year, or the years to come. And then on the facilities end of the actual budget, we're pretty lean. We're pretty much zeroed out, minus a couple fluctuations here and there. And we believe what we can do for this year that we can do for next year. So that's where we're at with our part of the budgets.
Great. Thank you all. Appreciate the information. I'll go around again for questions and we can get some more of those out on the floor and then we can talk warrant articles. So, Ann, I'll push it back to you. I think you're muted, Ann.
Sorry, Andy. Thank you. I have a question for the Hill School. I wasn't sure, Wendy, when you said what is one to when you stated 1-to-1. I'm not sure what that is.
Oh, 1-to-1 in technology terms means for every student we have a Chromebook.
Oh, thank you.
Yep. Sorry about that.
Oh no, that's fine. Thank you very much. So Andy, are we back to? I did have another question when Patty said concerning the meeting that she had with the principals today. What is the name of that document that's in the drive?
It took me a minute too. It's one of the colorful ones. In mine, it's the second document. It starts with Pembroke School District R ... The actual title is Pembroke School District Redundant Budget Request Due to Budget Free Sheet 1.pdf.
Thank you.
Dr. Morris titled that.
I think I would have guessed that.
So, Andy, are we back to asking questions of the principals or the budget?
Anything you want. I guess for now, if you have school specific questions, let's I guess we'll direct them to Patty, and then if she can answer them, great. If she wants to have one of the principals answer, that's great too, just for streamline's sake, I guess.
Thank you. I didn't have any questions for the principals, but you know, you're doing a very tough job right now, trying to juggle everybody. But I did want to also do a shout out for Amber when she was stating, you know, how far out she has to project these numbers. I just wanted to let everyone know or re-emphasize that this year she hit it dead on. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, so I just want to give credit where credit is due. So thank you very much, Amber. It is very hard to predict a lot of things.
Thank you, Ann.
The other question I have is when we're going through the budget, and I heard Jean say, you know, we need to possibly trim this down a little bit more. But the first question I have is, did we consider any of these items to be taken out of capital reserves that are in the budget currently, that we may have money in the reserves to use for them?
Patty or Amber?
No, we did not do that. And that's something that as you do your conversations, you can certainly ask us to do that. So we don't typically make the trust fund requests. Those are typically from the board if you're in a budget cycle. And we have done that in the past. And the board may look at the trust fund balance and say, you know, you've got enough in the curriculum materials. Can you pull $30,000 out of the budget that we will plan to use the trust fund for? So that's something you can do to help the budget as you go along too.
Thank you very much, Patty. And Andy, when is this due to the budget committee?
I believe our meeting date is 12/17. I should say our first one. I think our presentation is 12/17.
So we really need to have this wrapped up at our next meeting, correct?
As much as we possibly can. I mean, the MBC generally understands that things will fluctuate a little bit, but we need to have, I think I think a good goal is to have an idea of, right now I think the Fund 1 percentage increase is like 2.25%. And if we have an idea of where we want that number to be, and if we think that's reasonable, or if we want to try to go a little higher, or a little lower, and see if we can meet that goal with the help of the administration before we go to MBC. I think that's kind of the general strategy.
Thank you. I did have a question for Amber. On page 7, when we went for line 409, when you stated they were roster change, does that mean a new employee came in at a less amount of payment? Of salary?
Well, in that particular, Wendy had some changes to the roster, and let me. For that particular line, we actually removed a to be determined position from there. So we actually reduced the line.
Line 410, it's an increase of 39,000.
You said, I'm sorry, what was that?
It was line 410.
Oh, 410. Yeah, 409. Yep. Which is 606, 670.
Yes.
Yep, that line we actually took out an open position because she didn't feel she needed it next year.
But
so it's an increase, but it's not as big of an increase as we thought it was going to be, right? Is that
correct?
What you're saying?
It was from the last budget.
Thank you.
Sorry.
You're welcome.
Hey, Ann, can I jump in just really quick because I'm going to forget this? Ann said something that I wanted to just ask something. Could we be provided in the drive before our next meeting what our trust fund balance is?
Yes.
An up-to-date look at those just in case we want to go down that road.
Yes, they are in the drive, but we will move them to your folder.
Oh, are they in that budget
I
prep
think
one?
I shared them the very first meeting we started talking about budget, but we can put them in there so it's more current folder.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, Ann, didn't mean to interrupt. I just didn't want to forget that.
Oh, yes. I was looking for that earlier, and I thought maybe it was the 11.5 packet. The other question I have is on page 12, where we have, that's the problem I have with reading the budget is it just tells us, diagnostic services, or it doesn't, or maintenance contract. They're really not a lot of information here. So that could be just as new to reading the school budgets as in, every single line. I know the town, we have a lot more detail, but line 759, we just have diagnostic services. So what are those?
So if you look on line 762,
yes,
that description is for those above lines. So diagnostic services are charged by the SAU Fund 4 as on an as-needed basis for Pembroke shared of occupational therapists, school psychologists, and their related testing materials.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I just thought maybe that line only had to do with the line above it, but I appreciate that.
You're welcome. And I can certainly put it under each individual line. I was trying, if that makes it easier for you.
Oh, no, I don't want to put any more work on you, and this is excellent with that description. The other question I have is still on page 12, when we have a decrease in the nurse salary, 794. Is that someone that had left and came in at a different price?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we did. And those kind of positions, if you're seeing a decrease, it's because somebody new has come in, or we may have had two and we've shifted type of thing. But this one, there was a new employee or a change in personnel.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And I think that's it for me for now, Andy. Thank you.
You're muted, Andy.
It was my turn for that to happen. I just said, Gene, Amy, and April, if you guys had anything that came up from, what the principal said or what Patty said, go ahead. And when one of you grabs the floor, you can keep it till you're finished.
This is Amy. No, thank you.
Okay. Gene's shaking his head. Okay, so I want to we can move on to warrant articles then. Just a note for the board. As Ann pointed out, schedule's kind of tight. We want to have this buttoned up as much as we possibly can before we move it to MBC, which basically means we've got one more meeting to hash this thing out. So definitely, sleep with it under your pillow, become best friends with it. Anything that you see that you've got questions, absolutely don't hesitate to ask. If it's something that something that may not be of particular interest to the public and you want to send it to me again and answer ahead of time, that's fine. And we can kind of just recap those at the next meeting so the public is aware. To speed things along, however you want to, get questions to me, to Patty, we'll get them figured out. Like I said, everybody kind of be thinking about how you feel about this budget number. Again, the number that I typically use is the percentage increase for Fund 1, which is at 2.25-ish right now. As far as, what that's going to do to the tax rate and the situation in town right now and everything along those lines, certainly take into account the comfort level from Josh and the principals on that, and just kind of come to next meeting ready to do the same thing we're doing tonight, just rehash, see what Amber's got for changes, and really kind of try to button this thing up as much as we can. It's a weird year. I'm sure there'll be a little bit more work after the first MBC meeting than we typically do. But as much information as we can give them that is as accurate, up to date, and well thought out as possible is they certainly appreciate. So with that, Patty, do you want to do the warrant articles?
Sure. So this is pretty early for the board to be looking at these, and we thought because it's a short time frame this year, we've had so much on our plates, and typically the MBC doesn't get the warrant articles right away. But in the past, they've indicated that it would be really helpful for them to know where we're heading on the warrant. So I thought if we can make any decisions, it doesn't have to be tonight, but at least we can have Josh, while he's here, work through what his recommendations are for each of his appropriate articles, and then have any conversation that you want tonight, and just be able to get this out to the MBC so that they don't have to postpone their decision making because they're waiting for the warrant. So if it's okay, I will turn over some of these articles to Josh for explanation, and he'll point you back. We put the CIP in the drive, so there's that document which helps guide us on where we're going to make deposits and withdrawals. So I will turn it over to Josh.
So I'll start with number 3 on the list to see if the Pembroke School District will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $30,000 for the purpose of floor replacement and exterior painting district-wide, with said funds to come from the School Building Capital Reserve Fund, previously established for these purposes. So this is at this point, it's an annual request from the Facilities Department to replace flooring that might be aging out or is in need of replacement throughout the district, as well as exterior painting, specifically the high stuff that we do not handle in-house. And that prior to a couple years ago, we didn't necessarily have a plan with how we were handling this. So that's number 3. I don't know if you want to do one by one, ask questions, move to the next one, or if you just want me to keep rolling. You're muted.
I think you can go ahead and roll through them, and we can go open it up for questions.
Okay, so the next one, this is specific to, they're all specific to the Capital Improvement Fund, but this is specific to items that we've either identified from our engineering study or through some of our architects, or just known items that we know are aging out, or we can see the beginning signs of failure. This article is to fund, not necessarily to withdraw. So it's kind of saying, if we put a little bit away today, tomorrow when we ask for the replacement, the money will be there. So Number 4 is to see if the Pembroke School District will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $197,500 to be added to the School Building Capital Reserve Fund for the purpose of continuing work on the capital improvement projects, ADA upgrades, district-wide, roof replacements, air systems, which are our unit ventilators, gas-fired boilers and heating units, hot water heaters and dishwashers district-wide, fire life safety items district-wide, and to certify and extend fume hoods at Pembroke Academy and Three Rivers School. Previously established with such amount to be funded from June 30th, 2021, unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1st, 2021. Number 5 on the list is now asking to withdraw some of that money from number 4. And that reads to see if the Pembroke School District will vote to authorize the withdrawal of $70,000 from the School Building Capital Reserve Fund previously established for the purpose of roof replacement and fire life safety items. Specifically, we have roofs at Pembroke Academy that are failing. We're past the point, we're past its life expectancy. We're making fixes, whether it's in-house or out of house, at a rate that we can't maintain anymore, and that roof needs to be done as soon as possible. We're also up for sprinkler heads and at Pembroke Academy and Three Rivers School, which is going to cost a couple bucks. Sprinkler heads age out at a certain time. Number 6, and this is a new one, to see if the Pembroke School District will vote to establish a vehicle expendable trust fund under the provisions of RSA 198:20-3 for the purpose of purchasing, replacing, or repairing school district vehicles, and to appoint the school board as agents to expend from this fund, and further to raise and appropriate the sum of $20,000 to be placed in this fund. This sum to be transferred from the School Equipment Capital Reserve previously established for these purposes. So this was a request from the Capital Improvement Committee in town to be consistent with how the town handles their vehicle replacements. We're trying to honor that and gain some consistency between the two sides, the school and the town. Number 7 is now to add into that fund to see if the Pembroke School District will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $32,500 to be added to the Vehicle Expendable Trust Fund previously established for the purpose of purchasing, replacing, or repairing school district vehicles, with such amount to be funded from the June 30th, 2021 unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1st, 2021. And then number 8 is to now withdraw from that fund to see if the Pembroke School District will vote to authorize the withdrawal of $35,000 from the Vehicle Expendable Trust Fund previously established for the purpose of a school district truck, which is all that's saying is we have our truck labeled on our CIP plan for replacement for next summer, being 10 years old. Number 10 is mine to see if the Pembroke School District, if Article number 5 is defeated, will authorize the governing body to call one special meeting at its option to address Article number 5, cost items only. Number 11, to see if the Pembroke School District will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $25,000 to be added to the Site Improvement Expendable Trust Fund previously established for the purpose of fund paving district-wide, with such amount to be funded from the June 30th, 2021 unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1st, 2021. So this is, last year we started funding paving projects. This is continuing that plan with funding paving projects to get to a point to be able to handle some paving projects. Number 12, to see if the Pembroke School District will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to be added to the Technology Expendable Trust Fund previously established, with such amount to be funded from the June 30th, 2021 unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1st, 2021. Not really mine, but I've started talking a little bit about the CIP level. This is an annual request to help maintain and keep up with our technology within our buildings. Number 13, to see if the Pembroke School District will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of up to $35,500 to be added to the Equipment Installation and Labor Expendable Trust Fund previously established for the purpose of replacing and maintaining camera systems and equipment, with such amount to be funded by the June 30th, 2021 unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1st, 2021. So that's replacement of camera systems, maintenance of camera systems, servers within those systems, as well as some other equipment within that line. And number 14, to see if the Pembroke School District will vote. So number 13 is to fund that. Number 14 is to withdraw it. To see if the Pembroke School District will vote to authorize the withdrawal of $25,000 from the Equipment Installation and Labor Expendable Trust Fund previously established for the purpose of camera replacement and maintenance and a lawnmower. And
Andy,
those are the ones.
Andy, this is April. There's a lot of feedback. Would you possibly make the call or request that somehow people mute so we can hear better? Thank you. Thank you.
You're muted, Andy.
Thank you. Sorry. Dan, I don't know if you can still do a mute all. Anybody that's out there on the meeting, if you can double check that you're muted, there is an awful lot of feedback. It's making it hard to hear. Go ahead, Josh.
So that was 14. I can start from number 1 again, if you'd like, if you didn't hear him. But that was the end of what I had. I'd be happy to repeat anything.
No, that's okay. I've got some questions, but I'll open it up to the other board members first.
Andy, this is April. Several of these warrant articles have a script in blue, and I'm wondering what the significance of that is and why that's important for some warrant articles, but not others.
So some of this was Kathy worked on drafting this language, and she's never sure what the board decision will be, whether it will be to fund these from surplus or whether you choose to raise and appropriate the funds. So as she's drafting, she tends to use different colors just to make sure that she circles back after you guys make decisions.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Andy, this is Ann.
Go ahead.
The questions I have is, some of these don't really have a lot of detail to them, and I think the public is concerned about, where are we actually spending this money? If we say, some of these do have district-wide, and I understand that, but like number 4, I was looking to see. So we have the ADA upgrades district-wide. So that means each building needs to have ADA upgraded. So from the roof all the way over to life and safety, is that all district-wide? Because I do see that only Pembroke Academy and Three Rivers need the exhaust fumes.
It is, and it should be probably worded that way. So fire, life, safety, district-wide. As things age out, we need to be prepared to replace, from sprinkler heads to fire panels, which we've done recently, to sprinkler systems, etc. So that should be a district-wide. The fumes in hoods at Pembroke Academy and Three Rivers are specific. The roofs should be district-wide. We're trying to get ahead of the roofs, as opposed to me coming to you and saying the roof has failed and I need $5 yesterday. So okay. I probably can work that better and make some changes and get those to Kathy for you guys. But also know that number 4 is specifically funding, as opposed to, I'm not asking to fund that money and spend that money next year. I'm looking to fund that for all of these moving forward. And if I need a roof, as I'm asking for, then we're going to specifically ask that question in the next warrant.
Excellent.
So,
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just gonna, if I could just interject a little bit. So we've been having some concerns with our warrants over the past couple of years. As we've added detail, DRA has actually spoken to Amber about not adding so much language in our warrant articles, as has our attorney who reviews our warrant articles. So I think a recommended approach that will actually help for your concern too, Ann, is if we do like a summary sheet that we can attach and just spell everything out very clearly, because it's too much language. The purpose is either to fund a trust or to withdraw from a trust, and it's our job to inform everyone about what the intention is for that specific year that we're trying to accomplish with the capital improvement plan. So I think that might be an approach that we end up taking, because once these go to the attorney and DRA, I'm assuming they're going to come back with similar concerns that they had last year.
Thank you, Patty. Yes, I can see number 4, it does state out, but number 5, it just says for the purpose of roof replacement. So number 4, we're asking to put 197.5. And then number 5, we're asking to take out 70. Can we name the schools in that line? Because it just says for the purpose of roof replacement and fire safety items. People don't know. I mean, we know, you and I know that it's needed for all the schools.
Yeah, I really like the idea, Patty. I don't know if it was your idea or if that's what DRA said to do, but having a document that goes along with this sheet that we can have printed at the meeting that people can see. And also if we can get that taken care of ahead of time so that we can post it, so it's not just at the meeting, then hopefully people can get all of those details without having to make the warrants to be super long. But I agree. And I think the more detail we can give, the better. But I think if we can do it outside the actual warrant and let people have some access to it ahead of time, that would be awesome.
Yes, thank you. And Andy, do we know the date that this has to be to the town to get printed into the report?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I think David sent a schedule or was finished. Oh, Patty's got her hand up.
Yeah, so we did after the last meeting. I talked to Kathy about that. I think it was April that brought that up. So the reason that our materials are never updated in the printed book is because the budget committee doesn't finish until after the books go out to be printed. So by the time we have the public hearing, it's the beginning of February. The books have to be printed by mid-January. So Kathy has to turn everything in before the process is complete, unfortunately.
Thank you very much, Patty. I had a question on number 6. So we're setting up the vehicle expandable trust fund, and we're raising an appropriate $20,000, but that is being transferred, so we're not raising it basically.
So we would be looking to transfer the $20,000 to establish the fund, to start the fund.
Okay. So to raise and appropriate the sum of 20,000 to be placed into the fund, and this sum is to be transferred from that fund to this one to establish. Yes. Okay.
To establish.
All right. And so the next line is adding another 32,500 to that line.
Yes.
And then number 8 is to withdraw 35. So before we withdraw, we will have 52,500.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes. And the object of that is last year we asked for half of a pickup truck.
Yep.
And we put it in a trust fund that we've now been asked to move over and create this. So we're asking to pretty much transfer that 17,500 with a couple 2,500 just as a buffer within that fund. Now this year we're looking to ask for that half of the pickup truck, and then we're also looking to ask for half of the van that we'll be asking for the other half next year. And okay. Then that number will get smaller moving forward once we pretty much swap those two vehicles out.
Thank you.
It will be spread out more.
Have we looked at leasing the vehicles instead of purchasing?
I have not.
Okay. And then number 11, I was just asking, you know, for paving projects, if we could put in, you know, what these are. But like Patty said, if we have another document attached to it saying this is what we plan to do with it, I think it'd be easier on the public to understand, you know, what the items are going to be used for. And then number 13, when we're asking about, you know, maintaining camera systems, you know, for the security, I assume for the buildings, is it
For all of the facilities.
okay? Is this also thought of adding a second camera for the school district meetings to be added? The school district meetings, excuse me, the school board meetings to be videoed. I know we do have one camera. Is that in this line?
So that's not necessarily in this line. This line is for where we determine blind spots throughout the district.
Okay.
And needs throughout the district. It also is for a camera and a camera server, and the whole camera system is just like a computer. It has a life expectancy. One day they could be working fine, the next day they could be completely out. This helps us protect and maintain that. But by all means, can we, with that money, can we add a secondary camera to a secondary location? As of right now, absolutely.
Thank you. I did have one last question, Andy. So Josh, as you were going through, I believe you said number 10 to see if the Pembroke School District will revote. I think you said article number 5. Maybe I didn't hear that correctly.
Yep, it was 5.
No, I think that's a mistake. That pertains to number 9. If the Pembroke Para contract were to fail, you can have one special meeting.
Thank you very much, Patty.
Yep.
Thank you very much, Andy. And Josh, I appreciate all your work and answering all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Ann. Jean, Amy, April, anything on the warrant articles?
Yeah, I have, Andy, it's Gene.
Go ahead, Jean.
I just kind of ran down this, the warrant articles that would be appropriating the money from unassigned fund balances, and it's quite large. We're talking $300,000. So one thing, I understand you put a lot of work into this, but that's going to be fairly impactful. I think we have to ask the question, is this realistic? Are we going to get these to fly? And is there a contingency if they don't fly? You know, it's a big chunk of money sitting out there right now, but the expectation is that the town would get tax relief, you know, in the form of lower tax rate, this money being returned. So that's, you know, not quite half of it, but it's a good chunk of it. So I'd like you to take that into consideration moving forward with these. Secondly, I just want to go back to a couple of lines, or a couple articles. Number 3, raising and appropriating $30,000. And the way I read it was that money is going to come out of the school building capital reserve. Is that correct?
That's the intention, yes.
Okay, so we're not going to raise $30,000. We're going to appropriate it from the school building capital reserve.
I'm pretty sure it still has to be written that way. It's something that Jerry Fleury and especially Dan Crane every year, like, you still have to say raise and appropriate.
Well, see, and that's where I'm coming from, because I thought that's exactly the thought that went through my mind. Are they going to hit you on it if it's not worded properly?
I don't really, be honest, I don't understand why that is either, but I know that Dan Crane says it still has to say that, and he's been doing this long enough that I trust him on that one.
It's just splitting, you know, just splitting hairs. So I just wanted to, you know, we want to make everybody, make Dan and Jerry put a big smile on their face when we submit these. But yeah, my biggest concern is the dollar amount attached to these. I know you guys put a lot of thought into this, and you go through, and I know it's not just a wish list. I know it's what has to be done. but consider, other options moving forward if these fail, or reconsideration of the amounts that you are considering in these. That's
Thanks,
all.
Gene.
Andy, can I just ask a quick question on what Gene
Sure.
on number 3? So if this is not to raise the money from taxes, wouldn't this be a withdrawal from the capital reserve fund?
So that is confusing language, and somebody always raises this every year. And the best explanation that the attorney gave me when I questioned it years ago is that it doesn't matter where it's coming from. You still have to raise the funds for something. So we're raising it and we're appropriating it to something. And then the explanation is how is it happening and where is it happening?
Right. But some of these other ones do say, to withdraw. So where is this 30,000 coming from if we raise it? Because it just sounded like when we were speaking earlier with Gene, it sounded like it was withdrawing from capital.
I agree with
Yes.
you.
Yeah.
It needs to have withdraw in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can we just have Dean go through these, or whoever's appropriate go through them before our next meeting?
Absolutely. We just got them drafted today for you guys, and they have not been reviewed at all. So this is our very first draft. So yes, we will.
Good catch, Gene and Ann.
I appreciate it, Patty. I was just making sure I was writing my notes right. Thank you.
Thank you.
April,
Andy,
I see you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Yes. On number 6 and 7, one thing I think it would be helpful to stipulate, I'm not sure if this was the intent at all, but with the cameras, one thing that this board has received pretty consistently since the cameras were first funded is that we continue to record when we're not in the library. At some point, COVID will end and the executive order will end to meet via the way we're meeting now over the internet. How about we add that we're going to fund a travel camera for the purpose of recording the school board meetings? That way, if we meet at a different school, we can still record those meetings and make them publicly accessible on our website.
Andy, can I respond? Is that okay? I just wanted to fill you in. So April, we have been talking as a leadership team, and we've been talking to Josh, our IT director, because now that we've bought into the Google Enterprise system, they have some new ways that we can do things. And it's really going to be a conversation. And I think it needs to be on the agenda for the next meeting so that you guys can make some decision, because they now offer closed captioning, which is one of the big issues that we had. So if we can live stream potentially and have the closed captioning as an option and the ability to record by doing a Google Meet, a lot of our problems might be solved, and it might be relatively inexpensive.
This is April. I would like to see that us discuss at a future meeting, possibly before these warrant articles are approved, so we can determine, do we need additional funds to support that community request? Thank you.
I'll take a note as far as the agenda. Okay. Any other questions as far as the CIP type stuff, so the warrant articles in general? Okay, I've got a couple. So, Josh, I'm not sure how much of the language in here was your decision, in contrast to what's actually needed. I'm wondering if there would be any value in separating in number 6, the establish of the trust and the dollar amount. It's a pretty small dollar amount, so maybe it's not a concern. But I think that the CIP committee was definitely interested in seeing that get set up. And I would hate to see, because as Gene pointed out, the total dollar amount of money that needs to be raised here is north of 300,000. If the community is not for that, I'd hate to see the trust not get established just because the dollar amount is attached to it. So I don't know if anybody else has an opinion, and Patty, Josh, board members, anybody, if it might be better to separate that into two articles, one to establish the trust and transfer $1, and then another to take that 20,000 from the other fund and transfer it over there. So just food for thought. Don't really need an answer right now, just something to consider. And then the other thing that I had wondered, like Gene said, it's a lot of money. And I definitely understand the point of it. And to me, the high dollar amount's not overly concerning, only because I'm confident these are all things that have to happen. Fire life safety has to be paid for, and it's either going to get paid for now or it's going to get paid for later, or in worst case scenario, it's going to get paid for in an emergency situation, like Josh said. And that, in my experience, tends to be the most expensive way to do things. So don't want to be penny wise, pound foolish. But I wonder if the order of this should be considered. I know it was just drafted today, so maybe that hasn't been thought about yet. But because we have the one that is almost $200,000 and is basically 2/3 of the overall cost, and I don't have a suggestion. I'll throw that out there. I don't know what's better. I just wonder if there's something to be said for strategically putting that large one either at the beginning or at the end, or I'm just worried that there's going to be eyes on that almost $200,000 and people saying, oh man, that's a lot of money. And then other dominoes start to fall and we end up with a lot of things that don't get funded. I don't know. I guess I'm trying to play amateur psychologist here, but it might be something worth considering where we put that big ticket one in the grand scheme of the articles.
So Andy, that's actually something that the board does vote on. When you're ready to pass them on to the MBC, you'll vote on the amounts and the order that they go in.
Right, because they get funded in the order they're written. So that's another concern. If I guess, Josh, that's something that I can ask more directly, I guess. Well, first of all, has there been any thought to the order on this yet? Because if not, I can just wait until next time.
No, absolutely not. It was it was as much as there's thought into this document, it was put on this page between yesterday and today to get you guys a copy. So order means nothing.
Okay, so I guess I would ask you to think about that for the next time around, because I'll ask you the same question. But if we got to the point, and I know I know you know how this works. I'm explaining it more for the public that is listening that might not. If there's $350,000 here that we're saying we're going to put into different funds, and we end the year and only have a surplus of $180,000, we fund them in the order that they're written and at the order that they were approved at the meeting. So if you don't mind taking some time before our next meeting and I guess prioritizing, for lack of a better word, but putting them, in the order that makes the most sense. And it might be that big ticket one is first because it's so many things. And I think that's, CIP, that's something that the town wants to see anyway. But if that's something that you could, come back to us with a suggestion on next time, that would be helpful for me.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
And Andy, this is Ann. Can I just say I agree with you, is because the mindset of the people, at the meeting, and also working it the same way with the town warrant articles. I agree with you 100%, is that maybe some of these won't get funded because of the way they're placed. So thank you.
Yep. So, hold on, I got to find my agenda. Oh, my battery's going to run out. I lost my agenda. I apologize. There it is.
Public comment.
Yeah, I knew that was next. Let me just go around one last time and see if there's anything else. I guess I'll go Patty first. Is there anything else that you want to add before we move on?
I think we covered everything. Can I ask Amber just to make sure?
Yep, I see a hand.
No, I'm good. I just one thing about the warrant articles. I question number 6 as well. I think we're going to have to separate that. I actually had that note written down myself. I think the Department of Revenue will have us split that out. And then I was also going to wonder about the order. So I agree with all the statements that you've made. I think that we need to put these in order because they are funded as they present whatever the funding sources are available. And that article, I think, does need to be separated. The only other thing is we did add hourly employees on the agenda. I don't know if you wanted,
Yeah, I just want to wrap.
before you get to public comments.
Yeah, no, I wasn't gonna go public comment. I just wanted to ask board members one more time if there's any last questions before we move on to the next.
Andy, this is Ann. So would we have the information from how these need to be written for our next meeting, or is that something that we're going to have to do after?
No, I think Patty said she could have the attorney look at them before then.
Yeah, I don't see any reason. Dean can usually turn them around for us pretty quickly, so I'll get them to him right away.
Thank you.
Okay, we did add a discussion about the hourly employees. So, Ann, it was your request, so I'll let you go ahead and ask the question.
Thank you, Andy. Yeah, the questions I had is, last March when we had, the school shut down by, the governor, we had no choice there. We still had hourly employees getting paid, and that wasn't addressed until a couple of months after the March shutdown. So I didn't know if we were looking at this situation also to furlough some of our hourly employees while the schools are shut down.
Thank you. I have to step away 1 second or else my battery's going to die. I just have to run upstairs and get my power cord. I'll be right back. Feel free to discuss without me. Patty, if you'd like to respond, go right ahead.
So, Ann, we haven't looked at a furlough for the small amount of time that we're scheduled to be out right now. We did talk about that today as a leadership team. And I think the one group that there was question about was the food service workers. Our custodians, I had spoken to Josh and he gave me the list. We're going to have kids in the building, staff in the building, so they're going to have to continue their cleaning routine, and he'll need his crew at work. We'll need the support staff will still be in the offices, the people responsible for, the budget secretaries and the attendance secretaries. We talked about paraprofessionals, and as you probably remember that now that they have formed to be in the union, we would have to negotiate with them if we were going to touch their wages and hours. So that's something that the board could make a determination about. And then in terms of the food service workers, Donna did submit a letter to the board, and I don't know if Andy's planning on reading it. She was unable to be here, and she did ask that it be read. She prepared some numbers for you to look at when you're making your decision.
Thank you, Patty.
Yep.
I'm back. I can go ahead and read that. I think I even have the right one up. Okay, so wait. Okay, there's not really an introduction on this, so I just want to make sure I was at the beginning of it. So it says, Donna Roy, letter to the board. Last week, when one of our students with special dietary needs and his parent were diagnosed with COVID, one of our faithful school nutrition employees went the extra mile. Not only did she prep and box a week's worth of eligible meals for him, but she also drove to his house and left his meals by the door. No child left unfed, she proudly announced. This exemplifies one of several hourly employees we have in the district who help keep our program running strong, both with compassion and with results. Due to the recent USDA changes, every student is eligible to receive free breakfast and free lunch for the remainder of the school year. Please note this does not impact the budget that the district already planned for food service. However, the employees need to be ready at a moment's notice to pivot to providing meals on site, to providing meals for remote learning, and many days a combination of both for every child in the district. This can only be successfully accomplished with a trained and experienced staff. From March through present, our school nutrition staff remains on the front lines. Attempting to replace any of our hourly school nutrition employees will be costly. We need our staff to be on the front lines. Many people are not comfortable being there. We need them to be trained in food safety, sanitation, and school guidelines. This is not easily replicated. And we need them to be compassionate for our students, a tough ask for a newcomer who has no vested interest in the program. Current staffing has already been reduced by 1 day per week due to flex days on Mondays. Also, when the emergency closings occurred, some staff used their personal days. During my time, over 19 years, the school nutrition budget has been self-sustaining, and we continue to have positive operating reserves to support the financial health of the program this year. Our school nutrition staff has, again and again, demonstrated a vested interest in our program and the well-being of our students. I hope you can acknowledge the importance of keeping our loyal staff intact as we work through this pandemic together. They give 100%, and I ask the board to recognize their commitment and support them. Then there's a short table. It says 2020, 2021 school nutrition employment contracts, $242,182. 4 positions eliminated due to COVID equal $18,399.56. Reduction in staff hours and flex days equaled $25,082.44. The current total savings for the school year is $43,422. And then there's a final paragraph that says 5 employees currently working to meet the needs of remote lunches for all Pembroke schools and in-person learning at Strong Foundations Charter School. The amount necessary to pay the staff that would not be working due to fully remote learning at PA, TRS, and Pembroke Hill would be $7,761.94, approximately 3.2% of the total contracted budget. I have already made adjustments and have decreased the budget $43,000 or approximately, $43,422 or approximately 18%. And that's the end.
Andy, this is Ann. Thank you very much for reading that for our audience. But the question I had for hourly employees, I know Patty was saying that you still be using buses to get food to the students. Will an employee of the school district be on that bus to help distribute that food? I guess that's where information on hourly.
Yeah, so Donna and I actually spoke about that today. Once we know who can come and pick up meals versus who needs meals transported, that's going to help inform us not only about our busing, but about our staffing, because, there may be kitchen workers who, given, that they can supply sufficient insurance to cover them driving during work hours, could also potentially deliver meals to students. So we are trying to be creative with our resources and make sure everything is accomplished that we need to.
Thank you very much. I know it's just probably easier for the buses if there's an employee with them to help distribute. Thank you.
Yeah, one thing that I would point out that I think Donna kind of pointed at in her letter, but I'm not sure if she spelled it out, and I just want to make sure that the public listening understood. And maybe Amber jump in if I say something stupid, but the food service budget's kind of weird, and it's sort of separate from the rest of it. And I guess the big thing from what I've learned that's different about it is that they can roll a surplus and the rest of us can't. So what that means is that if the school district itself has extra money at the end of the fiscal year, June 30th, that money gets returned to the town, which provides some tax relief. If the food service budget has extra money, they just roll that over to the next year. So if we were able to save some money there, if I'm understanding it correctly, it would really just make their surplus a little bit bigger, which would help their budget a tad for next year. But it wouldn't be anything that would have direct impact on the taxpayers. I think I have that correct. So that's a weird one.
It does go into their surplus. It does not go back into Fund 1. The only time it would is if when we're looking at next year's a different story. So next year we're looking to offset the food service budget by a larger amount because they will only have, let's say they have no surplus this year. Just for sake's purpose of explaining next year. They have zero money that rolls into next year. They will have only $57,900 and change remaining in their surplus. So we would be taking that entire $57,000 and applying it to next year's budget so that the Fund 1 budget does not have to pay $57,000. So next year, if they have additional surplus, or if they have additional surplus this year, it potentially could help us next year not have to offset the budget so much.
Gotcha.
So it does help. It potentially could help the Fund 1, but They do
With
not
a delay.
receive the money back into the Fund 1 surplus. It does go into a different bucket. Does that make
Gotcha.
sense?
Yep, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or discussion around that issue?
Andy, this is April. I'm just curious, are there any hourly employees that have not been discussed? I've heard food service workers, also our facilities management staff, and the paraprofessionals. Are there any hourly workers that we have not spoken of, or categories of hourly workers that we have not heard about tonight?
I think I mentioned the like the office support staff too. And then I will ask principals if I missed anybody in your buildings.
Thank you.
Going once?
Nope, that was it.
Okay. Other questions?
Andy, this is April. I'm just seeking for some kind of clarification. I'm not sure what kind of contracts, for example, office support staff has, but I would assume that whether they're in the office or outside of the office, that those employees are still being paid for their time worked. Would that be a correct assumption?
What do you mean by out of the office, April?
I mean, if they're physically outside the office, because we do know there's still plenty of work that office staff can do without physically sitting in on school property.
So if they were also working remote?
Correct.
I don't know that we have anyone in the office staff working remote. If we could ask the principals to reply to that, because I'm just not sure.
Okay.
I do have one situation like that, and there's a staff accommodation for that, and that person's been able to do the things that they need to do remotely. It's not every day. I would say it's probably about 50% at this point, but we've been able to handle that.
All of my office staff are in 100% of the time.
Same here. We have all our office staff in the whole time.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Andy, if I can just add, we did have a departure of an office staff member at the end of the summer. And at that time, we elected to not fill that position because we really didn't know what this was all going to look like. So I just wanted to put that out there too.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, last call before we move on to, I believe, second public comment.
This is April again. I'm just curious as far as hourly employees, what's the protocol in place so that we know that no one's really waiting for work while they're quote unquote on the clock?
I'm not sure if Karen or principals are our special ed staff in the buildings who are in charge of scheduling paras are not here. So I don't know that the administration would have an answer to that question, but we'll open it up to them if they do.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you that for our paraprofessionals, they follow a schedule similar to our teachers and our students, and they have assignments based on those schedules. And as we go through a synchronous learning model, they just follow that schedule as if they were in the building, and they access those classes and support those students remotely.
The same is true, April, at Three Rivers. We have a daily schedule, and now that we're fully remote, that schedule is Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday with all students attending all classes. And so our paraprofessionals have not only like what Dan said, there's a very specific schedule, and they support students where they need to be, just like they would be in the building.
And we're echoing here because it's pretty much the same thing here. We do have a schedule. Ours will change now that we're reworking our sped schedules, but they will change and they'll be reassigned as needed. And we have lots of different schedules for lots of different contingencies, but we're always taking into account where they can be used for different things. In the event that there would be, a student that maybe wasn't there or different things like that, we definitely need hands on deck. So they're there all the time being used.
Thank you all.
Andy, this is Amy. I had a new item based on the first set of public comment. Can I just make a request?
Sure.
So I think that it would make sense for the board to request from Patty that she present a recommendation at our next school board meeting, which I think is on December 14th, for us to consider and discuss about the model of learning that would begin after Martin Luther King weekend. And then, excuse me, I thought I was froggy. And then that should put us in a good position to vote at our next meeting after that, which is right at the beginning of the year, which would then allow for, a couple weeks of proactive planning for whatever it is that we decide is coming next. So I just wanted to sort of throw that out there so we can start to line things up. I fear that if we don't do that now, we'll, be kind of rushing to the finish line again.
Sure. Okay. I put a note for learning model to be on the next agenda. Patty, if you can come prepared for that, look at the matrix and we can have another discussion about that.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so let's move on to agenda item number 4, public comments. So we'll again try to keep it to the 15 minutes. We've got a smaller crowd tonight, so hopefully everybody that wants to have a chance can get one. So Mr. Morris, if there are any hands.
Yeah, Tim Girardi.
Go ahead, Tim.
I just have to say that I'm actually really disappointed that we rushed a vote. I don't want to say rushed. We made a vote without having all the details fleshed out. Listening earlier that we don't have answers around busing. Meals delivery later on in the call is a question. Furloughing is a question. This gets to what I've stated to all the board members, the reactive nature of the board. I'm glad that we have, finally put a recommendation to get a plan in place. Hopefully it's one that makes sense and is rational and gives parents choice. What I would say is we need to stop rushing. We need to understand the impact, downstream implications of what the plan we're proposing has. Simple, very simple request. If we somehow lose busing because we are out for the next 5 weeks and bus drivers have been reallocated, what does that do for families who rely on busing to get their students to school if we say, yeah, we'll go full in the classroom, we'll go hybrid, we'll give the students more time in the school? We have to get out of this reactive mode. It has to start now. This is just, it's unacceptable, frankly, from a governing body. I'm not going to apologize for my tone. I think I'm being very respectful in my criticism. We need to see change from the governing body. We need to see proactive approach. It's been almost a year since everything has started unfolding. And I really hope to see progress at the next meeting. If not, then I will still voice my criticism because there has to be accountability. Tax dollars are at risk here. At this point, I'm wondering if we're just throwing good money after bad because we don't have the ability to plan. So I hope to be surprised in the coming meetings and that things change. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Others?
Brian Gleaton is next.
Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you. I just wanted to echo a lot of Mr. Girardi's sentiment there. It seems like every board meeting after meeting, we come back with more questions than answers or plans moving forward. A proactive approach, I believe, needs to be taken. I don't understand how we're still questioning policies and procedures a year into the pandemic at this point, with few answers other than go remote. I implore the board and the administration to be more proactive in these cases, or at least if there are answers to these questions, be more open during the meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, I can see hands now. How about that?
That's all I have for hands. There's one caller.
Okay. All right. If you're that phone person and you would like to contribute to public comment, I think you can hit *6 and unmute yourself. I'll give you a couple of seconds. Okay. And I don't see any other hands either. So we will move on then to agenda item number 5. The board
Hello.
has need to go.
Am I being heard? I'm sorry, I can't figure out how to put my hand up.
Nope, I got you now.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I was texting other parents. I'm like, how do I put up my hand?
That's okay. Go ahead.
Lauren Dwyer, 4th Range Road. I just wanted to say thank you very much because I'm sorry, Tim, I disagree. I think that you guys are being extraordinarily proactive. That is what our nurses encouraged you to do. That we had to take a proactive approach and not a reactive approach. Our cases are up over 700 today. So I wanted to just say thank you very much. And none of this is easy. Even those of us that have taken this remote option on, it isn't. And for some of us though, like as a parent of a special needs, differently abled child, and I'm not the only parent here. We have been worried about our children's education since they were 3 years old, 2 years old, a year old. It has never been easy. And I think you guys are doing a bang up job. Thank you so much for, really just looking out for our most vulnerable population. It means a lot to many of us. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. And now we will move on to agenda item number 5. The board has need to go into non-public session under New Hampshire RSA 91-A:3, Roman numeral 2, small letters A and C. Small letter A is the dismissal, promotion, compensation, or disciplining of an employee, or the investigation of any charges against him or her. And small letter C is matters which, if discussed in public, would likely affect adversely the reputation of any person other than a member of the board. We'll enter non-public on a roll call vote at 8:54. Gene?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
April? April?
Yes.
Thank you. And I'm yes. If you're new to the meetings, you're going to be put into a digital.
I'm a yes too.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I miss one? It's all the A's.
Okay. I
Thanks, Amy.
texted you to say that I would be right back, so it serves me right, and I will be right back.
All right. If you're new to the meeting, so there's a couple of pieces of business we can take care of before I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Andy, this is Amy. I will make a motion to put $27,000, $865.53 in a pool for increases for admin position, and $36,638.27 in a pool for non-certified increases, and $8,992.12 in a pool for increases for food service.
Okay.
Second.
Is that Gene?
Yep.
Thank you. All right. On a roll call vote, I'll start with Amy.
Right as I press the mute button. Yes.
Ann?
No.
April?
Yes.
Gene?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Thank you. And so one more.
This is April. I make a motion that we approve the staff leave that was presented to the board.
Thank you.
Second.
Jean won. Okay, on a roll call vote. Try to go the other way this time. April.
Yes.
Anne.
Yes.
Jean.
Yes.
Amy.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Before I hear a motion to adjourn, let me just say that our next meeting is December 14th at 6:30 p.m. I believe that's a Monday, not a Tuesday. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yes.
So just to throw that out there so that people remember.
Andy, Dan, can I just put a date out there for people to save? December 19th, Santa Claus is teaming up with the Pembroke Fire Department to do a route through town.
Well, you'd say the 19th, Ann?
December 19th. I know we have
Thank you.
a meeting before that, but I just thought we'd get it on someone's agenda.
Sure. All
Andy,
right.
this is April. I actually have a question. In our drive was a annual school district meeting calendar. I did see that the election of officers is on here with many other dates that are important. The one thing I did not see on there was the dates for declaring candidacy for the school board. Could we get the information on those dates and also when the public notice will be posted, as well as where that will be posted?
Sure. Sorry, I'm taking a note. From Jim. Yep, I can get that stuff for next time.
Thank you. I did see that last year Allenstown posted theirs on their town website. So it might be nice if we could ask the town, in addition to the Pembroke School Board, or excuse me, school district website, to have that information posted.
Sure. All right. I will accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Amy, is there a second?
April, a second.
I think I heard April first, I guess. So on a roll call vote at 9:19 p.m. Reminder to school board members, we do have to have a non-meeting after this, so please don't hang up immediately. Roll call vote to adjourn at 9:19. Jean.
Yes.
April.
Yes.
Ann.
Yes.
Amy.
Yes.
And Andy is a yes. Thank you very much. Thanks to the public that hung in there with us.
Good night.
Night, everyone.